Although this representation has its basis in the image that Tibetan Buddhism has carefully crafted of itself through the centuries, for Tibetans generally, including the social and religious elites, avoiding bad karma and demonic disturbances and undertaking meritorious rites and purifications were the fundamental objectives of religious life. Far from seeking to transcend the world in attainments of mystical contemplation, the day-to-day concerns that motivated the religious lives of most Tibetans, laymen and clergy alike, were the problems inherent in maintaining, not transcending, the order of the world by ensuring that harvests were plentiful, cattle productive, children sound, and enemies, whether demonic or human, impotent. Religious professionals, accordingly, were expected to minister to these and similar needs, whatever they might have to say about recondite topics like the nature of mind. Where the two ends of Tibetan religion, world maintenance and world transcendence, met was in the ideal of the Lama, the spiritually accomplished teacher, often regarded as a bodhisattva who, in virtue of his superior compassion, learning, and ritual virtuosity, was both motivated and prepared to act in the service of the world at large. It goes without saying that not all who were titled Lama, in fact, fulfilled this lofty ideal, though many surely strove to do so. The bread and butter concerns of the Tibetan Buddhist clergy required that they devote considerable efforts to realizing the broad range of ritual demands for the protection, peace, and prosperity of their patrons, and to furnishing them with divinations and astrological consultations. In encountering Tibetan Buddhism as it is presented in many works on religious teaching, which tend to emphasize doctrines and contemplative practices, one rarely finds even oblique references to those ubiquitous aspects of Tibetan religion as it is lived. Not surprisingly, there has been a marked discrepancy between descriptions of Tibetan Buddhism based primarily on doctrinal texts and those derived from anthropological studies of life in traditional Tibetan and Himalayan communities. This introduction, though stressing the textual record of history, doctrine, and practice, nevertheless also attempts to recall pertinent facts on the ground, as these are known, from observing the actual religious life of Tibet. Writings on Tibetan religion sometimes distinguish sharply between Buddhism, originally an Indian religion that came to dominate Tibetan culture from the late first millennium on, and Bon, described as the ancient indigenous religion of Tibet. This characterization is not without its problems, however, and it will be one of the tasks for the chapters that follow to provide greater precision about this. For the moment, though, it should be noted that the canonical scriptures of the Bon religion, in contrast to those of mainstream Tibetan Buddhism, have much to say about the world-maintaining facets of Tibetan religious life, as those have been in fact practiced. Accordingly, it is worthwhile to attend in brief to what Bon sources have to say about this. It must be constantly borne in mind that these matters are no less relevant to Tibetan Buddhism, despite the latter's relative theological silence about them. In practice, adherents of both Bon and Buddhism are equally concerned with maintaining harmony with local spirits and demons, with avoiding spiritual pollution and acquiring tokens imbued with blessings of auspicious good fortune, and with rites of passage that begin when a lama whispers a name into an infant's ear, and concludes with one's departure at death. Between gods and demons. In recognizing appearance to be a divinity, La, and thus beneficent, or a demon, Dre, and thus harmful, one comes to realize that all of birth and death are fashioned by divinities and demons, La Dre. In these words, a 12th century Bon text summarizes the human predicament in its most essential features. We inhabit a world in which invisible powers, capable of helping or hurting us, are omnipresent. It is therefore imperative that we recognize these powers for what they are, and learn how best to determine our own course in relation to them. The same work explains in brief how one deals with malefic spirits, which are regarded as perfectly analogous to the causes of disease. Nor are the worldly divinities, in contrast to the implacable demons, considered as inherently well disposed to human beings.